Good morning, everybody. I tell you what, I've been coming to these for a couple years now, thanks to the efforts of the Frost family and many other patriots. This is a strong room today. You guys are doing great. Amen. We're here because our nation's under assault. We're here because our nation is under assault, not so much from enemies without, but enemies within. We have raised generations of constitutionally illiterate people, and we have elected them to office. We have exalted them to the Supreme Court, and one of our greatest offenders passed just this past week. I have with me just one of Justice Scalia's many opinions on the Supreme Court, and he was a friend to this nation like no other. I tell folks, and I've shared it with a few this morning, that Justice Scalia's passing may be the most significant event of my lifetime in the area of our nation's history, because he understood the role of government within the framework of our Constitution, which is the longest surviving Constitution in the world today. But it won't survive if we continue to elect people that are ignorant of its framework and ignorant of the role that government should play in our lives, particularly the federal government. Amen? Amen. Justice Scalia, this one, they're all worth reading. I mean, honestly, I would encourage you to just pull up on the Supreme Court website and look for some of his opinions. And it'll give you clarity on what our role within the Constitution, particularly of the federal government, and specifically oftentimes with the Supreme Court, what that role should be. How many of you would say that the Supreme Court, in its actions over the last 7 decades, 8 decades, has distorted the fabric of America? Amen. How many know that whoever we pick to fill that position, that will be in the hands of the Senate of the United States, will determine the outcome and the direction of this nation going forward, right? That's very important. This particular case, if you remember back in 2012, the Arizona case, Arizona was trying to deal with the issue of illegal aliens, wasn't it? So they had introduced a law that basically gave their law enforcement, if they had reasonable suspicion to suspect somebody might or might not be in this country legally, to pursue that. Does that seem like an unreasonable thing to do? If somebody can't present a valid driver's license, if somebody can't speak the language, you kind of have a reasonable suspicion that maybe you're not here with lawful presence. So Arizona was trying to deal with it. They're a border state. Imagine what they have to deal with. Consider Georgia. We're not a border state, and we have one of the largest unlawfully present individual populations in the nation. But so Justice Scalia, in a dissent, because Justice Kennedy, in all his infinite wisdom, continued his direction. He's been pretty consistent in voting the wrong way almost every time. But in Justice Scalia's dissent, he said some things that I think are worth sharing with you. He actually quotes, well, I could read the whole thing to you, it's so good, but let's just say this. He says, today's opinion, approving virtually all of the Ninth Circuit's injunction against enforcement of 4 challenge provisions of Arizona's law, deprives states of what most would consider the defining characteristic of sovereignty: the power to exclude from one's sovereign territory people who have no right to be there. Isn't that interesting? The concept of sovereignty is foreign to most people. We don't teach it in our schools anymore. But sovereignty, I have to tell you, is important to our federal design. Who is most sovereign? God. God. That's God. We're going all the way to the top. Ravi Zacharias shared with me personally. Do any of y'all know Ravi? I got to meet him personally a couple weeks ago. He came to the Senate and he spoke with a group of us. And I have to say it might be the high point of my Senate legislative career. He came and spoke personally to a group of Republican caucus members. And he shared with us, he said, honestly, my friends, it's not about left and right. It's not about liberal and Democrat. It's not about conservative or liberal kind of thinking. It's not Republican or Democrat. It's about a vertical relationship. It's about up and down. And he goes to the point that really, if we're not rooted in God, then our whole framework fails. And this is what I think Justice Scalia, without mentioning the Lord, recognizes that sovereignty. We as individuals, in our sovereign capacity granted to us by who? God. Does government grant us our sovereignty? No. Do they think they do? Yes. Do they think they grant us our liberties? Yes. Unfortunately, they are wrong. They come from God. And Justice Scalia recognized that sovereignty is so important. We must reclaim that sovereignty as individuals, and we're doing it this morning. At the end of this process will be what we say the Republican Party platform should be and who our representatives should be within the GOP. Your participation today is paramount to making sure we maintain that sovereign view, that God is most sovereign. And in His sovereignness, He gave us liberty. And in our liberty, we chose to establish a framework of government over us, a very limited framework of government. Amen? Amen. Let's continue that process. Send me to Congress, and I'll fight for it at the federal level like I have at the state level. And I appreciate your support. God bless you all.